Hello. This episode, I'm joined by Rod Beer, Managing Director of the UK Business Angels Association. We'll be hearing about how the UK's angel investment community is a real British success story. We hear from Rod how the UK's angel investment community is larger than the rest of all of Europe combined.
The UK's angel ecosystem is the same size, approximately, as the whole of mainland Europe combined.
We also hear about how the number of women angel investors is relatively low, accounting for only 15% of angel investors in the UK.
The more recent report showed about 15% of women, so it is increasing, but it's slow. I mean, we've done this research for years before, probably maybe 8-9 years ago, it was about between 10 and 12%, so it's definitely increasing, the proportion, but it's not enough.
We'll also hear from Rod how successful entrepreneurs should think about reinvesting funds they've made in new startups and ventures.
80% of angel proceeds go back into investing. So for anyone thinking about angel investing, it's just be careful, it's a slippery slope. The more you invest, the more you invest.
This is a great episode to watch if you're looking for angel investment or even considering angel investing yourself. So today I'm joined by Rod Beer, Managing Director of the UK Business Angels Association. Rod has a career that spans over 20 years of managing, founding and growing angel groups and investment platforms that have collectively deployed over 100 million equity investment and more than 500 startup and scale-up businesses. The UKBAA is the trade body for angel and early stage investing, representing over 220 organisations and around 15,000 investors around the UK that collectively deploy over 2 billion per annum in early stage businesses. Thanks for joining us today, Rod. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thank you for having me.
It's a busy week this week for you, London Tech Week.
Yeah, it is a busy week for us. Every week's a busy week, to be honest. When you're a national trade association, you want to be out there supporting the members and you know, making sure they're representing the interests of everyone. So yeah, it's always a lot of time spent on trains.
Is there any key themes that sort of have popped up this week, or trends, or sort of sentiments that you're feeling?
Yeah, I think the bigger week, I think, is probably the spending review announcement yesterday, on the Wednesday. It's really encouraging news to see how much additional capital and support is being deployed via the BBB, via Innovate UK. So I think that's a really, really exciting announcement for us. We've been working quite hard with both those organisations, and for us, it's about they have such deep capital, but also deep connectivity into the UK ecosystem. How can we make sure that funding, that support, that infrastructure can be used effectively to really grow and scale and support those early stage investors across the country? So it's an exciting time.
So the BBB, that's the British Business Bank, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So how does that fit into sort of the ecosystem?
So I think they have equity in pretty much like 20% of all equity deployed in the UK is like BBB money, or it's a significant proportion.
How long have they been around?
Quite a long time. Just over 10 years. I did the 10-year anniversary. In fact, I did a similar video / podcast for them as
Excellent.
well. So an old soul. They do. So they're all about supporting and filling gaps and challenges in the industry. Early stage investing is always a challenging area because actually it's so much of that money. It's crucial because actually it's the starting point for almost all innovation in the UK. It's that early stage funding piece. Grant funding is incredibly important to help support R&D, to help support that kind of core innovation. But often grant funding is actually deployed alongside match funding. And so it always needs that kind of privately deployed capital. With early stages, the predominant investor in those stages are angels, and they're individuals who don't have to invest. When times are tough, they can wind back their investing. They kind of ebb and flow with the tides and the moon. It's a bit more of a challenging space to work. So the BBB have been very active in supporting that angel community and that angel space through their a number of programs, but probably mainly the Regional Angels program as well. So it's been very good to work with them to help ensure that it goes to where it's needed.
Fine. So what was the announcement? What's the extra cash?
It's still to be unpicked. So they've announced an additional like £25 billion from the BBB to be deployed over the Parliament. So what it actually means in actual cash and where it's actually going is to be decided. So it's about 2 days day after the announcement. So I think we'll see how that's made up and how that's going to be spent as well. But also significant increases in spending for UKRI, which includes Innovate UK under them as well. So that's a good thing. I mean, it aligns with government's mission around supporting innovation, backing investment, backing growth, that whole that whole piece. And so it's good to see that they've backed that up with some actual potential cash deployment in that space as well.
Amazing. Brilliant. We've jumped ahead of ourselves a little bit. We're talking about the PPB. We haven't spoken about the UKBAA. So maybe do you want to tell us a little bit about sort of the organisation, what's been going on? Obviously, Matheson Square, we've been working with you guys for a while. Love what you're doing, but maybe for our listeners and viewers, you could tell us a bit about what it is and how it works.
Yeah, sure. So UKBAA, we're a not-for-profit trade body for angel and early stage investing. So we look after lots and lots of, about 220 organizations, lots and lots of individuals, collectively deploying, I think you mentioned already, about 2 billion every year. For ours, our members are made up of individual angels, angel groups, investment funds, big and small, those who support founder communities too, so accelerators, incubators, royal societies, government agencies are members of ours, because we're all driven by that passion to support innovation in the UK. Obviously, being the UK Business Angel Association, our particular focus and drive and energy comes to kind of supporting, championing, training, educating, hitting the angel community where needed. That's what we really care about, in making sure that capital continues to thrive, continues to grow, is deployed efficiently, effectively, and makes a big impact, not just on potential returns for investors, but also fundamentally on great impact for the founder community too. As a trade body, we do a lot of work around connectivity, so we're very keen to connect the investor community with each other. It can be quite fragmented. It can be spread around the country. So how do we bring them together to help forge co-investment relationships, to build better access to deal flow, that kind of thing? We work a lot around education. So we do training and awareness about how to deploy capital effectively as an angel. We train and support about how to form and operate an angel group efficiently. We talk a little bit more about operating and forming an investment fund, which I think is a really interesting, shift in the industry too. And then finally, we work around, for me, it's about championing for change, really. We'll conduct the research to understand, what are the choke points, what are the issues, the bottlenecks of the industry, and how can we change? How can we support that? What can we do to make that better? So it's everything from improving diversity at the investor level. I think we need to see more representation across investors. We also want to see a better access to capital outside of the capital. There's a lot of, huge proportion of funding goes into that kind of London, the Golden Triangle. How can we make sure that wherever you start a business in the country, you've got the adequate access to the funding that you need to grow and scale and make that business a success? And then finally, we work quite a lot around sector activation. So for us, there's quite a lot of sectors in the UK where we're particularly strong in, but for whatever reason is somewhat underfunded. So things like creative industries, massive, net exporter for the UK, huge industry, globally represented, but significantly kind of underfunded and less understood by the angel community. So that's how can we solve that? How can we fix that? Deep technologies, really broad, but deep technologies need a lot of funding, a lot of money, a lot of support, a lot of tailwinds. So how can we ensure that through education, awareness, and insight, that we're driving capital into where we think those areas where the UK will thrive in will get the funding needed, because it will create great returns for investors fundamentally.
I mean, I've seen, connections on LinkedIn. I've seen you've been around the country quite a bit doing different initiatives, different programs, haven't you? So what have they been and what have they involved to sort of get that investment outside of the capital?
Yeah, I mean, it's for us, there's a few things. So we've been, there's a few things that regional piece, that kind of regional disparity, it's been given many names by many governments over the years. But fundamentally, if you want, what we've found and we've seen is most angel investors, they deploy capital. Normally, about 70% of the money they invest is invested in their own home region. So if you want to see more investment in Manchester, you want to see more investment in key developed nations,
angels that are there.
You've got to generate angels that are there. You've got to find that not all of them have. London in the southeast, southeast quite broad, but not all of the southeast has a high proportion. Probably 60% of investors are based in London and the southeast. And guess what? 60% of the capital is deployed in London and the southeast. So you can really see that if you want more capital outside, you've got to start. You've got to start on the ground out there. You've got to help train, upskill, support, build awareness, and get people investing locally in their own home, kind of local regions, as well as supporting founders coming to London to raise, as well as kind of championing different tech clusters around the country to the investor community that is based in London and the southeast. So there's a bit of there's kind of three ways to attack it. But our kind of predominant focus is around how can we get more investment happening locally to support the local founders. And it makes sense. Angels, they're not just writing checks. They're backing, they're supporting, they're helping, they're guiding, they're sitting on boards, they're introducing, they're being as much as a support network to their founders as possible. And that's very hard to do from a very far away. That's why they tend to keep things a little bit more local.
Yeah. And has that been working? And have you found any hotspots around the country?
Has it been working? I mean, we're a small organisation. It does, and it has for sure. We've been working. I've been, cracking away at that kind of that challenge. I think for probably since I've been at the trade body, so coming up 10 years. We've seen a real growth in angel groups, in angel capacity, in awareness around the importance of angels and angel investment. We've seen a lot more activity going, not just to activating founders, let's get more startups, let's get more scale ups, but actually also looking at the funding ecosystem that's there too. So they're starting to realize that you can't keep churning out founders if they haven't got any money to access. So we have definitely seen traction, progress, but it's a big country, and it's a long-term game. So, it's something that we will always be working on, and it's not something that I think all countries wrestle with that challenge about how do we make sure that there's activity as much as possible outside of the kind of main central city-based hubs. So,
I mean, I guess in the UK, London's disproportionately large relative to other cities.
Yeah, it is. But we are. It is. I mean, it is. But it's also, it's like one of the legal capitals of the world. It's one of the insurance capitals of the world. It's always been one of the financial capitals of the world. So, yes, it is. But it's also been disproportionately on a global scale as well to an extent. So you can kind of see that a little bit. But there are some incredibly exciting founders coming out from different parts of the country. And that's it. Great innovation comes from everywhere, anywhere, always. And so having the right infrastructure in place to spot that innovation and provide the necessary support around that innovation is crucial. And that's investors, ultimately, we want to see great businesses coming out from great spaces with really good insight, doing really good things. And that's how we work. That's what we want to see. So there are, I think, some incredible clusters around the country, and I think it's only going to go up from there.
Fantastic, brilliant. We talked earlier about sort of creative industries and efforts you were doing in there. Am I right in saying that you were involved in? Is it called the Creative Enterprise Evolve program?
Yeah, so we alongside Creative UK. So Creative UK are kind of a trade body for creative industries across the country. They're originally Creative England, and they merged, led by the excellent Caroline Norbury. So they have a number of programs, which is all about finding great creative industry. As creative industries is massive, it's broad, it's huge, right? It's all about finding founders operating within that across those industries that are innovating, that are doing really exciting, really interesting stuff. And again, it's about giving them the capital, the support that they need to help their businesses to grow. So we've worked with them for many years now, and actually in other areas around supporting creative industries directly with DCMS, directly with other bodies, because there is a slight disconnect between the creative industries and angel general kind of early stage angel investors. There's not a huge amount of dedicated investment funds out there. Angels tend to have, their background tends to be slightly more technical, financial, that kind of probably. Don't want to be too generalist, but it tends to be the case. And so when it comes to understanding an exciting, create tech business, that's changing the way that we consume content, create content, or distribute content. They don't always immediately align and understand it. So we, through kind of education, awareness, and support, both support founders in understanding how investors talk and what they want to see, and also support and train, I guess, investors about how creative industries operate and what the opportunity looks like. So I've been doing that for quite a few years now. It's an interesting space to work in. I mean, the UK is globally recognised as like a massive hub of creativity. We always have been. We punch way above our weight within and across that space. And so it's a natural place with crossing our strong innovation kind of backbone. It's a really big opportunity on a global scale, I think.
I think definitely, yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting is when you talk about the creative sector, angel investing doesn't normally come first to your mind, right? You kind of think this is bigger studios or more large. If there is investment, it's on a much larger scale.
I mean, it's for ours. It's also the industry has seen huge changes driven by technology. Everything's changed, has been changing. The way we consume, the way we create, the way we distribute, as I mentioned already, it is all changing. It's driven by technology. And in fact, that's where investors can come in. They can see, this is a really exciting technology that is applicable on a huge scale. This could be some really, really exciting, can be game changing. And so that's a space that I think investors should be looking.
You talked a little while ago about angels being sort of quite technical. I mean, this might be a sweeping generalization, but do you tend to find that angels, they've been successful, they've made money in a particular industry, and then do they stay in their lane? Do they tend to sort of reinvest in that industry, or do some of them, branch out in completely different sectors and think, that sounds interesting, I'm going to invest some money there? Yeah,
it's a really good question, and I think it's a real mixed. So we actively support and promote if you've got a lot of deep domain expertise in an area. And there is, it's rife for disruption, and there's great work around some, founders coming out with exciting innovations to help disrupt and change and improve that area. Then you should absolutely be investing and deploying in that sector, because you can bring a huge amount of support to that founder. You could make an investment and have a share in that business, but then you're actively incentivized and driven to actually just really help them, advise them, guide them, introduce them to really useful customers, really useful potential suppliers, supporters, whoever it may be. And so that is the beauty of angel investing, is a huge amount of value investors bring. And they're taking a check, they're taking a share in the company. It's ordinary shares typically. They are in the same boat as the founder. They are there. They will only succeed and make an exit if that founder succeeds. So it's a real strong alignment to the cause as well. So that's really great. Having said that, a lot of investors also invest, through just seeing, through passion, through seeing things that they love, they think, wow, what an amazing founder, tackling a really important challenge in a really effective way. And so they'll often invest outside of their lane. I mean, I think, over the years I've spoken to many, sector expert, kind of sector investors, and they'll regularly invest in things that they just like the look of, and they thought, what, that was a fantastic founder. They know exactly what they're doing. They've got a really strong insight on their respective industry. They've already got some good industry backing. Angels can also be quite well connected with one another sometimes as well. So let's say someone has a deep domain expertise in engineering and they're writing a check in an engineering business. I think, well, actually, you're writing the check in there. You get that industry. You're going to sit on the board or just act as a really kind of involved advisor and just help that business as much as possible. That's a great signal. I want to be a part of that, and that's quite common too. So you'll get an industry expert, kind of deep domain expertise investor writing a check, going into a business, and they'll leave that round, and other investors who have less expertise will just follow it because they think, what, this is because of that individual, that is to some extent de-risked for us, and vice versa. If I'm investing in this certain sector because that's my strength, happy to have others who are less experienced but can write capital in there and represent that interest too.
And so when most angels invest, are they doing it like on an individual basis? Or are they doing it collectively as part of a fund, part of a syndicate? Or is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of both, yeah. I think so. Traditionally, it's all been direct investors individually investing directly in a business, and so directly taking a shareholding, and that's a large portion of the funding landscape. Even when they're investing as a syndicate or as a group, we're a big supporter of groups at UKBAA. I think there's 90 angel groups as members of ours. We're huge supporters of them. Even when they're acting as a group, yes, they might well have a kind of a joined up shop front as a website and a company, and take that kind of team approach and group approach. They're still often taking direct shareholdings in the business directly. Right. So they might operate as a group, but when it comes down to the actual investment, they'll invest directly. Things have changed through technology, just like any other industry. Our industry has changed through tech as well. The cost of doing an investment has come down massively, driven by great platforms that are known and loved, but also the ability to set up SPVs has become never been easier. And so often they're investing now, much more of a growing trend, and they're investing via special purpose vehicles, bear trusts, etc., where there'll be one entity on the cap table for the founder, but actually that one entity represents a number of investors that have gone in, and that has also made it more accessible to investors. So before, it used to be the domain of only those who've got quite a lot of money to risk. The minimum check size back in the day, I've been doing this for 20 odd years, minimum check size used to be 50k, or it's not even worth a conversation because the legals would have cost 20, 30k just for a small funding round. So But now it's legal costs are much lower. Making investments, the documentation around actually making an investment are much better known, better understood, templated, kind of simplified, slicker and easier. So investors can invest much smaller checks, which means they can invest their money that they do have to invest across more businesses, so reducing their exposure to risk. But also, investors who are actually just successful individuals. They might not have had a big exit. They might not have had a load of money come their way. Can actually just invest professionally using their small amounts of savings and their salary on the side. So that's been a really interesting development.
Excellent. So sort of increasing, the diversity, I guess, of the angel investment community. Women investors. I think there was a report, was it the 2022 Women Angel Insights? It said that there was only 14% of angel investors were female. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you sort of see anecdotally, do you see that, has that been changing recently?
Yeah, I mean, the more recent report showed about 15% of women, so it is increasing, but it's slow. I mean, we've done this research for years. Before, probably maybe 8-9 years ago, it was about between 10 and 12%. So it's definitely increasing the proportion, but it's not enough. We want to see far more women investing and deploying into founders. We're seeing far more women setting up amazing businesses, and they need that backing and that investment. So it's definitely a challenging area. It has been for a long time. We've been doing a lot of work around that space for quite some time now. A key part of that more recently is probably we're founder signatories on the Investing Women Code, which is a government-backed, government from DBT, government-backed initiative, which is all about for us. So we also are the delivery partners for the angel aspects of that code.
Okay.
It's about encouraging groups, so specifically for angel groups that we support. It's about encouraging them to assign a diversity champion within their own business, about encouraging them and supporting them in actively taking initiatives to help improve the diversity amongst their investor base, but also the founders they back too. And also, crucially, reporting on the data. So what are they actually seeing? Who are their members? Where are the actual checks going? This year, so the report's due to be released in July, actually on the day of our awards. So we've got I'll be heading
Looking
over
forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. We've seen a really interesting increase and uptick in the proportion of capital being deployed into not just female-only businesses, but also mixed management teams as well. So it's been a really encouraging uptick that we've seen, even though it's within a kind of a picture of a slightly more challenging landscape. So we've seen actually, although the amount of money deployed came down during the year, so it's actually for 2024 calendar year. The proportion of that money and where it's going has definitely seen some upticks from a lot of the good work being done.
An interesting point you just touched on there about the amount of capital being deployed and how it may have gone down recently.
Yeah.
Is that a trend you see reversing, or
not? So again, there's another report being released. So the BBB's equity tracker, British Business Bank's equity tracker, will be released imminently. Within there that we've got a dedicated section around angel investment, and it shows a second year of a decline in angel investing. So it's a bit of a challenge. I touched on it a little bit earlier. Angel investing it's individuals writing checks. So when the world looks a bit more challenging, when things are a bit tighter, when some of your holdings in other areas might not be doing as well as you thought, so that high risk stuff, which angel investing it is high risk. Often it's the kind of the play money used to invest of a small proportion of an overall investable assets, but about 15% of my assets I might put into angeling. If everything else is looking a little bit challenged, do I want to continue doing very high risk stuff? It often just gets reduced a little bit, just as an impact of general kind of economic uncertainty. We've then, and although some of that has started to kind of see a little bit, although maybe internationally a little bit more challenging, but domestically we've seen a little bit of improvement. We've also seen a challenge around liquidity for angels, and that's been a real problem for a lot of investors. This is the thing: if I invest in a business, if that business succeeds, grows, scales, and is ultimately sold, and I make a nice return on investment, I don't go off and enjoy it in the sunset. I reinvest that. Like 80% of angel proceeds go back into investing.
Wow.
So for anyone thinking about angel investing, it's just be careful. It's a slippery slope. The more you invest, the more you invest. So be careful before you start. But it goes back into angel investing, and so we need to see far more investment at that kind of later. We need to see more exits, fundamentally more liquidity. We need to see, because that money goes into angels, and those angels use it to then reinvest. So we've seen a real reduction in that kind of exit activity, driven by, I think we all know the kind of some of the core reasons around that.
Yeah.
That's been a challenge. Another kind of I guess knock-on impact as well is it's been a bit more challenging to raise that kind of slightly later scale-up funding. So there's been a lot of discussion
ask about
about
that.
it.
What's it? Once you've got your seed funding or your angel pre-seed, how do you get that follow-on funding? What's the landscape
Yeah,
like?
so again, it's often angels, we're backing them up until they get to their kind of Series A stage. But that over the last couple of years has been a bit of a challenging area. It's been difficult to get that next institutional funding round. And so if you're backing, I've got 10 companies in my portfolio, 3 of them are at the stage where they can go on for Series A funding, but they're just, because it's a bit more challenging, more competitive, they're not quite ready to get that. They can't quite get that, even though they should be able to get it. They're not. So what do I do? Do I reinvest in that business to keep them alive, or do I let it effectively die? And so angels, because obviously they believe in the founders, they believe in the innovation, the business, they can see some great traction, but just they will continue to back it. We've seen a rise in angel bridging rounds, which is going to keep them going until they can get that institutional round. But that means more money is going into keeping those businesses operating to continue their growth trajectory, and that's less money overall to invest in new businesses and other areas. So it's been it's been a challenging few years, I think, for the industry. Other areas of things like R&D tax credits being reduced. If the less money that those founders get via the R&D tax credit scheme means more money needed to be deployed by angels. So again, it's just lots of little things that are kind of adding up to a slightly more challenging environment.
Well, there was it last year, I think, the announcement about the SEIS and EIS. Can you quickly sort of just explain what that is?
Yeah, so it's not last year. It's actually the tax year before.
Okay.
Because it runs. They release it the month after year end, but for the previous tax year.
Okay.
I suspect it's because there's quite a lot of data to crunch. We saw it was a 20% decline in EIS funding deployed, but a 50% increase in SEIS funding. So SEIS is that really kind of early first round, second round, kind of post friends and family rounds. So that's been increased. So that was encouraging to see. But there's been a decline in EIS funding deployed, and we don't yet know about the just kind of recently finished tax year. But anecdotally, we think it's probably going to be another reduction.
Yeah, sad.
Yeah, it's a worry. I think it's always a worry, and it makes things a little bit tougher for founders. It's a tougher environment for investors as well, of course. There is a bit of an old adage that's been said for my entire life, which is, great businesses will always get funding. They might not get as much funding as they need or should get to grow, but a great business will always get their funding. If they're doing great things and smashing it, they will get it. It might be harder to get hold of, but they will fundamentally get that investment.
So on that theme, if you're a startup looking for angel investment, what are the things you should be considering? What should you be doing? Who should you be approaching?
Yeah, I think if you're on that early stage, so let's assume, so fundamentally, when you look at the kind of the equity landscape in the UK, for an early founder who haven't yet got any meaningful kind of commercial traction, so not yet got any sales in the bank, angels and or kind of SEIS funds tend to be the main source of private capital. Often backed up and supported by British Business Bank, often supported and aligned alongside Innovate UK grant funding. So there's quite a lot of good packages of funding out there. If you're in that early stage, before going out to angels, you probably need to have developed and kind of proven the concept. So built some kind of low fidelity version of whatever it is you're trying to sell, whether it's a physical product or a digital product or whatever it might be, a service, etc. You should really make sure that is you can externally prove that there is something interesting here. If you can do that, then you are at a stage where you can start to approach and talk to potential angels. Where you go, that's a very long conversation. There are some good resources online. So our website has completely free to founders. We never monetize founders in any way. There is our membership directory. So we've got about, I mentioned 80, 90 angel groups on the directory that founders can research and approach. There's lots of kind of growing new platforms, things like shipshape.vc. That's quite good for seeing
Okay.
VC deals. Daniel Sorko founded that. He's a very good founder. There are a growing number of kind of online resources. TechCrunch you can go onto and have a look through to find it. LinkedIn. People are much more open about being angels these days publicly. So there's a lot more that you can kind of research to find investors. There's also, great, programs being operated to help founders in certain sectors. So lots of incubator, accelerator programs that are all there to really help you develop your business, your thinking, provide some resources as well, and they'll often help you with that kind of fundraising piece as well. Although it is quite challenging out there. You definitely want to be, if you want to raise angel capital, you definitely need to or should be eligible for EIS or SEIS, so that's Enterprise Investment Scheme or the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, and that's just because it's such a great tax break for angels to invest in. It significantly doesn't reduce the risk. It just reduces how much capital you expose to that risk. So it's a good tax break that angels don't use probably like 90% of the time. So, and to be eligible, it's quite fairly straightforward. It's challenging to not be eligible for that tax break. There are a few industries, a few sectors that are excluded, but have a look on. There's lots of really good guidance online, and it's a key thing to be able to access. And just to put it into context, EIS attracts, anything between 1.5 to 3 billion pounds of funding every single year. Wow. It is huge. The UK's angel ecosystem is the same size approximately as the whole of mainland Europe combined. It is a absolute success story.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's driven by a large extent through those tax breaks that have been active for over 30 years. We're probably the third per capita from an angel investing perspective. We're probably like third largest in the world, which is pretty good for a pretty small island.
Amazing. And so if you're a startup, what about intellectual property? Obviously, we're an IP firm here. Are angels, are they looking for IP? Are they clued up on IP? We've done some pieces before about trying to sort of educate some angels about what they should be looking for in IP. Obviously, it's not Series A stage, so it's not going to be examined in as much detail.
No. But it's about having, it's about defensible moats, and whether that's, you've got a technology, you can actually patent something or copyright something and actually legally protect something from others to copy is one thing. And I think it is important for, especially in, deep technology companies, companies that rely on that intellectual property. So having that secured, or at least a pathway of understanding about how to adequately secure that from being, plagiarized or copied, or there's always going to be some level of plagiarization, I'm sure. But having a pathway of understanding to ensure that is a core asset and it can be protected. That's definitely an important thing that investors will be looking at. They'll be looking at, well, what's the innovation here, and how can you stop someone else with more money and deeper pockets from doing it? How do you stop that? And protecting IP is a key part of that. Also, being able to move quickly, having market insight, having first mover advantage, those kind of things. Quick. Fast implementation of the business strategy, I think, can be helpful in terms of protecting what you're doing. There are other ways of kind of protecting that those interests as well.
Yeah. It depends on the business and what's right for them,
and what you're doing and what sector, what industry. But ultimately, if I'm only going to make a return on my investment if someone buys that business, generally, often a trade sale. And if anyone can copy that, the potential acquirer could just copy it and save a lot of money trying to do it themselves. Although there's a lot of challenges. These bigger incumbents might struggle to innovate like that. But it's definitely something that I think would be valuable to investors. And it's part of the due diligence they conduct. So we put together kind of the DD checklist to help investors and steer them on their diligence before making an investment. And a part of that is looking at the IP, where it sits, where it's held. Making sure that they've had there's quite a few things that have, making sure they had the right contracts with the contractor who did the logo, making sure they had the right, there's quite a lot
good
to really,
stuff.
All good stuff, all important stuff. That
exactly.
Often, and it's often not thought about when you're brand new. And to be fair, you need to go out and start getting some traction and making things happen. But there will come a point when you're looking to have a serious business, to raise serious capital and make a big difference, where you've got to think, well, okay, it's time to tidy this stuff up and make sure we've got proper ownership of the stuff that we need to sell.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say in my personal experience, some angels are very clued up on IP and they know exactly what it is they're looking for. Others, less bothered. Maybe it could be their sector background, maybe it could be the sectors they're investing in. But there is a sort of, a range of knowledge and understanding about IP, and some misconceptions as well, particularly around software. I think a lot of the work I do is predicting software and with patents. And I think, I've spoken to angels, at events we've been at together, and they said, oh yeah, well of course we can't patent that. And it's like, well, actually you can.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think it's definitely, the angel community is like 50,000 people invest every year as angels, roughly, 30 to 50,000, depending on what numbers you look at. But it's a lot of individuals and a lot of people. And there's only a couple of sources of education around how to do that effectively. And we're one of them. We've got a growing centre of excellence on our, I think it's a bit presumptively named, but it's probably, I think centre of excellence seems to be the things that people put in place. But for us, it's about having that kind of central library of best practice and how to make sure we can do things. And within there, we do quite a bit around, due diligence, including around IP and understanding that more. But probably more could be done actually around that. Maybe we should do a session, Andrew, about patenting software. The pros and cons.
Yeah. Rod, we're sort of running up against it now, towards the end of the session. Sort of any final thoughts in terms of sort of where the industry's going, the future of angel investing, sort of challenges that need to be addressed?
Yeah, very big. Considering we're coming to the end of it, it's a very big question to ask. How long have we got? I think it's a good question. I think where are things going and shifting? It is a changing market and landscape. I think we're fundamentally seeing an increase in capital. If you look at the last few years, it doesn't look particularly good, but there's a few spiky years there. But if you look at the broader 10-year picture, actually, it's a growing space. More money is being deployed and invested. More people are getting involved in understanding angel investing. So that's been really good. That technology driving the kind of democratization of angel investing is a great thing. I think we want to see more education just to make sure they understand the risks fully, building up portfolios, taking trying to de-risk the approach to angel investing as possible, I think is a key thing. We're seeing definitely I've seen, and I've really enjoyed seeing and supported and actively worked around that kind of professionalization of investing. Individual angels now kind of forming more professionalized and structured angel groups with the view of also then forming an investment fund to again, it's about deploying capital as professionally and effectively and efficiently as possible into great businesses. So we've just seen that trend really go. It's been really interesting to see that. It's something we'll be actively supporting. I want to see more liquidity in the industry just to help unlock more capital for our investors to be able to do more with fundamentally and create more success. So I want to see more of that. I want to see more, for those founders listening, if you do successfully grow and manage to exit the business, it is your duty to then become an angel investor and to give back to those poor founders. Yeah, don't just sit on that beach. You can sit on that beach, but write some checks from the beach as well. It is your duty to back the next generation of founders who are trying to hustle and make the world a better place through innovation, basically. So if you do make it, do make sure you think about, how can I give back? And you can give back by writing checks and supporting founders doing very cool, very great things.
Amazing. Rod, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.